So the next sample we have over here is the patch pocket sample, and the way we will approach this sample is we need to transfer the information from the paper to the fabric, and we are working, this is the right side of the fabric in this case. So what I need to transfer is the pocket placement. So I need these corners over here to be transferred to the fabric from the pattern paper. To do that, I will use the tailor tacking method. So I will be tailor tacking all of these corners, and all I need is just to pass it from one side to the other. All right, so I'll do the same thing in all 4 corners. Because I don't have 2 layers, I have 1 layer only. So all I need to do is just to pass my thread from the paper to the fabric. And trimming. Okay, and I'll do the same thing with this corner. And the last point will be the tip point. So in the middle of this dot, I will pass my thread to tailor tack the pocket placement. All right, so I marked the placement of my pocket on my pattern piece. Now that I did that, I can take my pins out and remove my pattern piece, and I have my 5 points indicated on my garment. Okay, so this is step 1. Step 2 is transferring the information on the pocket piece itself. So the first thing I want to do is I need to mark a 1/4 of an inch fold line on the upper edge of my pattern piece. So I'm using my ruler and a pencil, and I will mark a 1/4 of an inch line on the upper edge of my pocket from beginning to end. And what I need from this line is a notch at the beginning and a notch at the end. Okay, from here also mark the notches on all of your seam lines. So there is another notch over here, and then notch, 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 and notch. And why are we doing all of these notches? Because they will help us fold back the fabric and iron the pattern piece. So these are to indicate seam allowance of the pocket bag. Okay, so I'm notching on these lines at the ends of these lines, and again my notch is somewhere between 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch maximum. I don't need too wide of notches that ruins my garment. So just I'm notching with the tip of my scissors, and that's all I need. Okay, again we said that the notch shouldn't exceed more than half of the seam allowance amount that you are working with. So here is my last notch, and that's all the information that I need from this pattern piece. So I have 2 notches for this fold, 2 notches for this fold, and then notches to indicate so that I can fold back my fabric and cut it. This pattern piece is cut 1, and this pattern piece is cut 1. And the next step is ironing my seam allowances back. So I am when it's cut one, the pattern piece is put on the right side of the fabric. So I will remove my pattern piece, and then I will proceed to using my notches to iron my seam allowance back. Okay, so the first part that I'm going to press is the 1/4 of an inch fold that I have from the upper edge. So this is the upper edge and these are the two notches. So I'll use these two notches to first finger press a 1/4 of an inch fold back of my fabric. Okay, and then once I did the finger pressing, I am using my iron to iron back this fold. Okay, so what's next? The second notch, you will take your fabric backwards, okay, and you can press that too. Okay, also you can come to the bottom of the pocket and also use the notches to fold back the fabric. Okay, this in this case will be the inside of the pocket. Okay, so I'm using the beginning and ending notch to indicate the 1/2 inch, and I'll do the same thing. So here is my notch, and I can use my ruler to fold back 1/2 inch. So I'm aligning my edge with the 1/2 inch line on my ruler, and then I'm folding back these two edges. I'll stop at this point and then I'll go to my sewing machine and I will sew this part at 1/2 inch on both sides. So again, what I did so far is I folded back a 1/4 inch and then I folded back again on the second notch. Okay, and I folded the bottom over here at 1/2 inch on each one of these. I will go to my sewing machine and I will sew at 1/2 inch just this part on each side of the fold to hold it in place. So we're moving on to the sewing machine from here, and then we'll come back to the ironing board in a little bit. So I am at the sewing machine and I have my fold, my 1/4 inch fold, and then the fold backwards of the where the second notches are, and I am going to sew at 1/2 inch on each side of this fold, using my seam guide to align my edge with the 1/2 inch line. And I'll start from the beginning, take a few stitches, stitch length number 2. Okay, so I'll take a few stitches and then I'll back stitch, and then I will forward stitch until I finish that seam. Something is not right with the stitching formation, the bobbin thread. So I am at the sewing machine where I'm going, so I have again the folded 1/4 inch, and then I folded back another 3/4 inch where the notches are, and I am aligning the two edges together, and I'm going to sew at 1/2 inch away from the edge. So I'm aligning my edge with the 1/2 inch stitching guide. So I'll take few stitches forward, number 2 stitch and then back stitch, and then I'll proceed to sewing until I get to the edge of the fold, and then I'll back stitch again. One more stitch and then back stitch. Okay, so this is one side, and I can trim my thread. Alright, and I'll do the same thing on the other side. I'll push my thread back, and then in this case I will align the two edges together, touching the 1/2 inch seam guide. In this case I will start from my fold point. I'll take 1, 2, 3 stitches, and then I'll back 1, 2, 3, okay, and then I'll sew again at 1/2 inch until I finish, and back stitch again. Alright, and that fixes that fold in place. Alright, why did we do that? Because we are going to flip. So I'm going to I can actually reduce the amount of seam allowance in here so I can trim my seam allowance. Okay, I'll leave the seam allowance at an angle over here. Okay, and I'll do the same thing over here, so I'll trim my seam allowance in half. Okay, and then I'll also cut it at an angle and trim it. Right, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it towards the pocket and flip it inside out. I can use a pin to bring this corner out, and I'll do the same thing on the other side. Okay, and as you can see, the seam allowance is folded towards the inside of the pocket. So I'll go shortly to the ironing board to keep the seam allowance, to press the seam allowance, and so that it's settles on this position. What I'm going to do next is from the inside of the pocket, I'll push all the seam allowances inside this fold, and then I'll take it to the machine and I'll stitch at a 1/16 of an inch by aligning my folded edge with the inner edge of the toe. It's a permanent stitch, so back stitch. Okay, and again I'm kind of hiding all the seam allowances inside this fold, so I'll be stitching at 1/16 of an inch until I get to the end, and then I will back stitch. Okay, I'm done. And this will be the outside of the pocket bag. So everything is hidden inside the fold from the inside, and on the outside all you will see is a stitching line. I'll go back to the ironing board to iron back both of these edges, and then I'll pin it to the garment, and then we'll take it to the machine again to fix it in place. All right, so the next step is on the ironing board. So on the ironing board I'll use my ruler to press the side edges of the pocket in place. Okay. Alright, so now my pocket is ready to be assembled and attached to the garment. What I need to do is I need to pin the pocket in place, so I'll use the upper 2 points to align the upper edge of the pocket, okay, and I'll use pins to pin the pocket in place. So I am aligning the corner, so corner to corner, okay, right, and then I'm using my pins to align the corner with the point or the tailor tack. The same thing over here. And the last one is the bottom point. Okay, so I pinned my pocket in place on my garment, and then I'll go to the machine to top stitch the pocket in place. Here is up close how the pinning is supposed to look like. So the way I will attach is I will start on from this point, and then I'll go up, and then I'll do like a little triangle over here, and then I'll go all the way, and then I'll create the triangle, and I can also, if I want to, I can do parallel stitching, so I can start and do a little rectangle, and then I'll come back, come here, do the rectangle, go back and parallel by 1/4 of an inch, and then I will end at this point. So this is kind of a design detail. So I can do a triangle, or I can do a rectangle with parallel sewing. So I'll show you where I will start. So I will start at the corner. I will start over here, alright? So I'll come right there, and then go pivot, and then pivot again, and go all around. I will start at my stitch line, and I am aiming, basically my needle is aiming at this point over here. So I'll do a straight line, and I'll back stitch a couple of stitches, and when I get to a 1/16 of an inch away from the edge, I pivoted, so and I'll do 1, 2, 3 stitches, and then I'll pivot again, keeping my folded edge at a 1/16 of an inch away from the folded edge, and then I'll be stitching all around my pocket, pivoting at the corners and staying at a 1/16 of an inch away from all corners. Okay, so when I come close to a corner, I will hand crank to make sure that I don't overstitch, and then I pivot, I'll continue stitching until I come closer to my next corner, removing your pin, while my needle down, anchoring my pattern piece, and then one, and then I'm in the corner. Now I can raise my foot and pivot again until I get to this next corner. I'll remove my pin and hand crank until I get to the corner at a 1/16 of an inch. If you feel that you're too close, you can do half a stitch so that you are a 1/16 of an inch away from the edge. And then I pivoted the last corner. Again, keeping my edge a 1/16 of an inch away from the edge. Once I get to this corner, if you need to do half a stitch, you can. And then it was 3 stitches over here, so I'll go 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3, and then I'll pivot back to this corner, so I am aligning it with the needle so that I will stitch straight to that corner and then back stitch, and done. So when you are done with your pocket, this is how it's going to look, and you can remove your tailor text, okay? So this is the patch pocket exercise in sample book 3. Alright, and also trim your thread so that your sample is nice and clean front and back. Okay, so the patch pocket sample, and I'll see you in the next one.